We didn't plan this. We just kept having the kind of conversations that made other women say, why aren't you guys recording this?
So now here we are. Welcome to Closet Chaos and Chair Confessions, where the clothes are cute, the hair's half done, and the truth? Well, it's usually somewhere between emotional breakdowns and outfit changes.
Isn't that the truth? We're talking fashion, hair, business, burnout, and all the stuff that nobody else wants to say out loud.
For sure. It's like therapy, but with better outfits, more cussing, a lot of Midwest charm, and wine. So let's get into it.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to Closet Chaos and Chair Confessions. Today's episode is incredibly special to me because not only is this guest of mine a guest in the salon, she's been coming to me for several years, but she's become, I think, a friend in my world, and she's talking today about her story with breast cancer and how she's one badass bitch. She is a survivor. She's been through hell and back, as many of you who have gone through any type of cancer, specifically breast cancer. And I know it touches so many lives and so many people. And it's so funny to me as I'm like talking this through right now, even like my mom got diagnosed with small cell lung cancer about 5 years ago. And I always had people come up to me and say, you know, so-and-so has cancer. And I'd always feel it in my core because I'm like an empath, but like, having it hit home, like actually hit me personally, it changed my whole outlook. And I consider myself somewhat of an advocate now for people with cancer. And I just want everybody to know everybody's story and that you're not alone. And so today, my guest here is Jalisha Hoffman, and I'm so thankful that you're here today. So let me start by welcoming you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of get into your journey.
Yep. So as Desiree said, I'm Jalisha. I grew up in the Altoona area and have lived in Bondurant for the last about 9 years. John and I and Peyton, my 13-year-old daughter, we live in Bondurant. I stay busy with her sports and activities, and then I work full-time. Ironically, as a nurse, I work in hospice for the last 9 years as well, and have learned to love that field of nursing. Never something I thought I would do, but here I am. So that definitely was an impact as well when I was diagnosed with cancer myself.
Were you working as a nurse and in the hospice?
Yep.
You were?
Yep.
Through it?
Yeah. So like I said, I've been in hospice for 9 years, and my diagnosis was 4 years ago and just a couple of weeks from the time we're recording this. So at the end of September, I was diagnosed in 2021. So I'd been in hospice about 5 years when I was diagnosed and worked through the treatment course.
Wow. And I would imagine, I'm not trying to get too ahead of myself here because I like to do that, but I would imagine you dealt with people who had cancer in hospice and probably specifically breast cancer.
Yeah, did at that time and still do. And so knowing what I knew as a nurse and working in hospice, of course, with that diagnosis, my mind went straight to worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And I learned through some counseling after my diagnosis that I'm a catastrophic thinker.
Yeah.
And so I think worst case scenario about a lot of those situations. So that's something I had to kind of go through and grow myself in and not thinking about those outcomes with things.
Yeah. Wow. I would probably relate to that wholeheartedly. Okay. So you said you got diagnosed a few years ago. How old were you when you first got diagnosed?
I was 32 when I was first diagnosed, a few months away from turning 33.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So let's get into your journey. How did you first find out that you had breast cancer, or even before that, what kind of led you to get checked out?
So I had a non-cancerous lump when my daughter was born. She's 13. So got that checked out after I had her. Ended up being just fat tissue, very common in females. A lot of younger women have dense breast tissue and can develop fat, like a fat lump essentially, called a fibroadenoma. So I had that tested and kind of removed about 13 years ago. So then I kind of did self-breast exams, follow-ups. That was all cleared. With my age, I was not great about doing self-exams every month.
Sure.
Like a lot of us aren't. So I really advocate for that now. I actually happened to just be sick in bed This was during the heat of COVID. Pretty sure I got COVID at the fair. Was laying in bed home because everybody had to quarantine at the time, and just happened to be watching TV with my hand on my chest and felt a lump. So wasn't truthfully trying to find it, but did. And with that history of a non-cancerous lump, I decided to just go straight back to Katzman Breast Center here in Des Moines because I had that history. I didn't feel like I needed to jump through the hoops of going to my primary provider.
Sure.
And kind of just working in healthcare and knowing what it looks like to get through all those steps, I decided just to call straight to the breast center and see if I could get back in with somebody I'd seen there before. And so they scheduled me and they said, we'll go ahead and do an ultrasound and the mammogram, and then we'll have you see the nurse practitioner that you had seen before. And so they said, do you want 2 days of appointments? And I said, no, and like just do it all at once. So I took a half day off work for those appointments. And quickly, while I was there for the testing and knowing what I know in healthcare, I knew that this wasn't just a non-cancerous fat lump again. And I knew there was more to it before there was even really answers on the table.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you can go back for me.
Yeah.
What was your like initial like emotions? What was going through your head in like those early days?
Yeah. So when I found the lump, I wasn't worried, like I said, just because I had had that history of a non-cancerous breast lump. So I went by myself to that appointment for imaging. And now whenever I know somebody's going because of something like that, I tell them to take someone, or if I know somebody that has a friend that's going, I say, please go with them. Now a strong believer that no woman should go to those appointments alone. It's a really scary feeling when you're by yourself. And so during the ultrasound, the tech asked some questions that I knew weren't normal questions if she wasn't seeing something. And so my heart sank in that moment. Of course, she went to get the radiologist to go over imaging, and I started like feeling more around the area. And that's when we found the lymph node in my armpit that was like a golf ball.
Wow.
And so I remember very vividly calling my boss, who is also a breast cancer survivor, and telling her I wasn't coming to work the rest of the day because I'd planned to work in the afternoon.
Yep.
And then calling my significant other on the way home and crying to him. So then he left work, and then telling my mom. And like I said, we didn't have an official diagnosis, but they knew it was suspicious. So I kind of cried it out, and it was on a Thursday. So the biopsy was done on a Friday. It was a Thursday or a Friday, but we wouldn't have results until Monday. And so I had to live through it over the weekend. And so I processed and kind of had that like grief for the weekend as everybody told me to hold on to hope and maybe it was nothing. And everybody just kept trying to be positive, and I just asked everybody to let me process. So I was very emotional for the weekend. And then by the time the results came through, I just was ready to tackle it. And so when they called to tell me it was official, it didn't even make me cry that time just because I had already prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they, just out of curiosity, did they bring you in to tell you, or did they tell you over the phone?
They told me over the phone. And I know like some clinics kind of post results before they discuss, but luckily that was not the case. She called and she said, where are you? What are you doing? And I said, I know what you're going to say. I was driving.
Yeah.
And that's where she was getting at. And I'm like, it's fine. I'm prepared. Just tell me. So, they called and told me over the phone. And working in hospice, that's what I tell people. They're like, how do you do what you do? And I say, what I do is not as hard as the people that have to give the news. Yeah.
No, I'm sure. So what was your official diagnosis?
So I was diagnosed with stage B triple positive breast cancer. So you hear a lot of commercials of like HER2 negative positive, hormone negative positive, triple negative. So mine's triple positive. So my cancer grew off of estrogen, progesterone, and the HER2 protein. And it was 2B because it had spread to the lymph node, and just the size and the aggressiveness of the cancer.
So then how did, I know you have a good core group of people only because I know you personally.
Yeah.
But how did they rally or show up for you after your official diagnosis?
Yeah, for sure. So at my place of employment, they put together like a lunch. We did like a fundraiser through that. I had worked at Applebee's in Altoona for years before that when I was in college. And so they have like I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head. It's like a Giving Tuesday or something they do where you can go in and a certain menu, like 50% of the proceeds go to a person or a charity cause. So a friend of mine who still worked there put that together. Everybody was like wanting to give and do things. And I'm a very humble person and I don't like to kind of be a burden on people. So it was very overwhelming in the best sense of way. Ironically, we had a trip booked, my best friend and I and our significant others, to Fort Myers. that was supposed to take place that first week of October, so shortly after I was diagnosed. And I remember saying, I'm not going, I can't go. And the oncologist said, yes, you are going. We will start chemo as soon as you get back. So that was a very like surreal trip for me, just meant a lot. But yeah, friends, family, it's really interesting. Like you find out how much you really mean to those around you when you go through something like that.
Yeah. And you really do find out who your rocks are and who are your ride or dies and who are just there when it's more of a convenience for them.
For sure.
And it does, I will even say, as a daughter of somebody who has cancer, I'm sure even for you, it like opens your eyes and like totally like makes a different perspective on life, I would imagine.
Oh, 1000%.
Yeah.
You realize the little things don't matter as much. You don't really get angry about little things. I mean, I do still, but not as much as you used to. You feel the highs and lows a lot more. You definitely, like, the term YOLO comes to mind a lot. Like, you only live once. Take the trip, like they say, do the things. You just really appreciate everything on a much bigger level.
Yeah, because one moment you're sitting in bed watching TV and you feel a lump, and the next minute you're getting an ultrasound and getting told you have cancer.
Yeah.
And you're only 30 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
It is.
So you did chemo. Did you have to have surgery and everything as well?
Yep. So I was diagnosed September 27th. October 18th, I started chemotherapy. I went through 6 months of chemo. It was every 3 weeks for 6 rounds. My math might be wrong right now, but somewhere around there. And then I was also doing immunotherapy, which treats the HER2 protein. So I was getting 2 chemotherapy drugs into targeted therapy. I suppose they call it drugs. So 4 meds each time I went in. And then I did a double mastectomy because of the aggressiveness with some lymph node removal. I did 25 rounds of radiation, so Monday through Friday for 5 weeks, and that was in like May of 22. And then once that was completed, I was still doing the immunotherapy for another 6 months, and then I went in for reconstructive surgery after that. And then I still go in every 4 weeks for an injection, and I take a pill every day to keep the hormones out of my body. And then I had another revision from the reconstruction just this January because of the long-term effects of radiation causing some issues. That's another thing I think people don't realize is you think like, oh, I beat cancer, it's over, but it's really a lifelong diagnosis.
It is.
Yeah.
So I want you to share with those that don't necessarily know what the chemo treatment looks like. When you go in on a day for chemo, how long were you at the chemo suite?
Yeah, so for the very first day, because they're monitoring everything so closely and seeing how you respond, that first day was 7 to 8 hours. So it was literally like a full day of work. And like I said, this was in 21, so COVID was still a thing. And you were only allowed one visitor with you in the chemo suite when I was going in. And honestly, my mom went with me the very first time and the very last time. But every other one I went by myself, and everybody's like, you go by yourself. I'm like, I'm a nurse. I'm a people watcher.
Yeah.
So I would just sit there and work and kind of watch what was going on. But so that first one was 7 to 8 hours. And then everyone after that was around 5 hours because I was getting so many meds. And yeah, I ended up going with a port. A lot of people don't. So that's just like an implanted device in your chest where they can hook the needle right into it because I have terrible veins and I knew I was not going to love being hooked up that way. Some people opt not to because they don't want that reminder. But so I also had to take, and a lot of people do, you have to take steroids like a couple days before, during, and after chemo to avoid side effects. So it's not like some chemos make people sick and everybody responds differently, but they do a lot of medication now to avoid like the nausea, vomiting, a lot of that stuff. But the steroids they give you made me sicker than the chemo, I thought. But yeah, so then they're hooking you up. You're getting like IV Benadryl and IV nausea meds that last days in your system. So you're not sick, but it is a very long process. And I remember like, oh, this isn't that bad, which sounds crazy about chemo. But then it's the cumulative effect. So as it goes on, by that last round, that's why my mom went back with me because I was just so weak and exhausted as it went on.
And did you have to have what they call like the red devil?
I did not. And so that one, I believe, and I might be misspeaking just because, like I said, there's so many subtypes of breast cancer, which I never understood. But I think that one it's either a triple negative or like basically it's one of the different subtypes of breast cancer that gets that.
Okay.
So I did not. I've heard a lot about it, but my chemo plan was different because of the types I had.
Yeah. And I remember just seeing my mom go through that. And yes, it's an all day thing. And I can't believe you went by yourself either.
Yeah.
Because I remember going with my mom, and I tell everybody this too, don't ever send a loved one to a place like that or to a doctor's appointment at all anyways, ever these days,
Right.
alone, because no matter if they're young or old, you don't always collect all of the information, especially when it's happening directly to you, because your mind is just spinning and you don't think of those questions to ask always.
Yeah, so for the regular appointments, like with the oncologist, with my surgeon, like all the clinic appointments, I always had either
Good.
John or my mom with me, or like his mom would take me to tests and stuff. But if it was when it was the actual chemo and I knew what to expect, I just like to just sit there. It
And
was like
just
my
do
little
it.
zen time where I'd work and just watch what was going on and chat with the nurses. And
That's incredible.
yeah.
Because I remember leaving the chemo suite a couple of times with my mom, and I'd always take her out for breakfast, or we'd do something. It would be like a girls' day,
Yeah.
try to be
Yeah.
positive about it. And I remember seeing so many people leave and they're alone, and then they'd like get in the car and they'd start crying. And I literally just wanted to go over. I didn't know who they were.
It is a very somber place, very emotional place. And at my age, sitting there, you like feel so out of place. Not that cancer discriminates against age, but I mean, a lot of people assume everybody's older. So then you're sitting there, this 32-year-old bald, everybody's staring at you like, poor her, she's so young. So that took some getting used to.
Mm-hmm.
And now on the flip side of it, when I go in, I do go to the chemo suite for my injections. And I feel like I'm just this person that looks so healthy now, which is great. But then you feel bad for everybody else. So it's just a very uncomfortable waiting room.
It is. And I will say, to piggyback off of that, and I'm sure you had good experiences too, the staff that my mom had with her treatment and her doctors were phenomenal. I can't speak highly enough about them. As sad as that place is, and as sad as the situation is, they do a good job, I feel like.
1,000%.
Yeah. And I can't imagine going to work almost like yourself, like with hospice. I can't imagine going to an oncology clinic every day as a nurse or a doctor and being the person to have to tell them all this bad news, because I'm sure they tell more bad news than they do good.
Right.
Yeah. So what would you say was the hardest part for you? Like, was it more physical, mental?
I would say mental. It's definitely like how Ray says mind over matter. And I think just constantly that fear was in the back of my mind of thinking like, is this still growing? Is it getting worse? Is this going to work? Like, it took me probably a year after treatment was complete to finally not worry every single day that the cancer was going to come back, that I was going to die from it. Like, that fear was there for so long. I would say mental for sure. And I feel like everybody just wants you to be strong. Was the hardest for me. Physical, I worked through all of it except for surgery. So during chemo, you kind of knew how your cycle was going to go. Like those first few days with all the meds in your system, you actually felt pretty good. And then it would kind of crash. So I would, in my job as a case manager, I would go see patients while I was feeling good. And then I would go home and kind of sleep in the afternoon and then get my charting done that night or whatever it looked like, and just kind of ride those waves of energy. My friend at work would take me to go to visits, and so I would ride with her to keep it a little bit safer. But just being around people definitely helped me get through it, and then just continuing to be active helped me physically get through it, I think.
Good. Yeah. That's what my mom said too. She was, because I was like, Mom, you need to stop working. You need to just focus on your health and just do things that make you happy. And she's like, work does make me happy. It gives me purpose. It gets me up in the morning. She's like, and I think that's what helped her get through it too, was working and staying active and not letting the cancer just take over. Yeah. You're right. Mental is, I would say, and when I've talked to other people too, they usually say a similar effect. Would you say that there was any other unexpected moments that maybe were humorous to help you get through, that was just like, oh my gosh, this would only happen now? Or
so when I thought about the question of humor during this, there's options that people try to use for not losing their hair. Like there's cold capping and there's different things, and I just didn't know enough and wasn't really that worried about my appearance at the time, so I just let it go. Lost my hair. I would wear a wig occasionally, but typically not during work because it was in the winter months for the most part, so I would just throw on a hat or something. Well, there was one day I went to see a patient who was typically not very verbal. She had some memory memory issues, and I was wearing my wig, and she said, "What happened to the girl that was bald? Is she okay?" And I pulled my wig back, and she said, "Oh, honey, it's you." And so like I will forever have that memory engraved in my mind that even the patients I was seeing were recognizing what was going on, you know. So just the humor of that, and like how you can truly just change your personality by throwing a wig on or being bald and just not really caring so much about your appearance.
I love that. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you a question I've actually been wondering myself, because I kind of get socially awkward sometimes when I go around people who are grieving, or I just have a hard time because I want to be so positive. And I heard once that when you are going through something, let's say it be like a loss of a loved one, or you're going through cancer, or you're just having major health issues at all, do you want people to be like rah sis boom bah you and be like, girl, you got this, like when you're having one of those days? Or do you just want somebody to listen to you and let you have that moment? Because it sucks sometimes.
That's where I think it circles back to the it's okay to not be okay. So I think it's kind of a combination, like recognizing that person's not okay, letting them get that out, feel all the things, and then trying to uplift them. Mm-hmm. I think you can do both, but making them feel like it's not okay to be hurting or upset, I think is where the problem sometimes kicks in. And I had this conversation with somebody just recently who lost a loved one, a patient of ours, and I was like, "How are you doing? How's it?" And I'm like, and I literally stopped myself and I said, "Why do we ask this question?"
Yeah.
Like, why do you ask somebody that's going through one of the worst things of their life or the biggest loss of their life, "How are you? How's so-and-so?" And then you're like, "They're okay." Like, how do you answer that question?
Yeah.
But it's just in American society, that's what we ask people.
Right.
And so I think like it's just one of those awkward situations where we don't really know what to say.
Yeah.
Even like before I was diagnosed, a friend of ours was diagnosed literally a month before me, and she's a year younger. And I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Like, let me know what you need." And that's just what feels natural to say, whereas nobody's going to come out and tell you what they need. And so a lot of people say, like, instead of asking somebody what they need, just offer something specific. Like in those moments where somebody's down, if you want to go cheer them up, like bring something to bring them joy. It doesn't have to be something expensive or whatever, like grab them their favorite coffee or to try to cheer them up that way, I think helps.
Yeah. And I think if you know the person personally, you know what their love language would be. So you know what would cheer them up best. Right, and you're right. It doesn't have to be over the top or expensive. It just needs to let them know that, hey, I see you, I care about you, and I'm here for you.
Yeah. So I think even recognizing those bad feelings just so they know they're being seen, like you said.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a really good segue too, because I want to know what you wish other women knew about self-checks or early detection, with us going into October, with it being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and you getting diagnosed right before that month.
You don't realize how much breast cancer awareness is talked about in October until you're diagnosed days before. And then I talked about we went on vacation, and so you get on the plane and they're like, "We want to recognize National Breast Cancer Awareness Month." And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's everywhere. And so you appreciate the research and you appreciate the awareness, but it's a really hard month for people that have been through it just because it's everywhere and you can't escape it. Just knowing that it's never too early for self-checks, knowing your body. It doesn't have to be like extravagant checks. You just need to know what your breasts feel like, feeling your armpits, the tissue around it, your clavicle, nursing brain, your collarbone, feeling for those lymph nodes, bumps, lumps, things like that, and knowing your cycle and when to check, whether it's the first of the month, every month, and you're noticing those changes, whether you check close to your period and knowing your body and how it changes at that time, and just advocating for yourself. A lot of times with a younger woman, a doctor's going to say it's nothing. They're going to say it's fat tissue. They're going to tell you to monitor it. Don't take that for an answer. You know your body better than anybody else, and you have insurance more than likely. You're going to be the one paying that doctor bill. They have no right to tell you.
Absolutely.
That that's the answer. I've seen it in my job. I've seen it with friends where they wait long for a diagnosis just because the doctor's not listening to them, and we expect doctors to be truthful with us. And the reality is that more and more young women are being diagnosed, so not waiting and not saying, well, the doctor said it's nothing, so it's nothing. Like, you have to be your own advocate. And then that's where, like you said, taking somebody with you who's going to help you be that voice. A lot of people, I don't think, recognize that insurances don't always require a referral from your primary. Some do and some don't. But you can always call those more specialized, like the Katzman Breast Center in those places, and try to get in. I don't know what that looks like for every insurance, but just not taking no for an answer. I mean, if you go to the doctor 3 times with the same thing, I think they're going to finally give in. So just pushing until you get an honest answer.
I totally agree with that on all healthcare levels as well, especially with the situation that we're in the healthcare industry that we're in. And we can get into that on a whole other podcast, but she is absolutely right. You guys, do not take no for an answer. You know your body better than anybody. And if you're not feeling good and if you don't feel right and you don't think something's right, you just keep moving forward until you get an answer, because you can't live with a poor quality of life or not feeling good or things aren't the way they're supposed to be. So that is really good advice, Jalisha. And we kind of talked a little bit about this, but I want to know, how did you kind of view your beauty and your style and your femininity before, during, and after, I guess?
It changes a lot, especially, like I said, with being a hormone positive breast cancer. I now don't have any estrogen at all in my body. I go for an injection called Lupron, which is essentially like the depot shot that shuts down my ovaries. And then I take a pill every day that's an aromatase inhibitor. So it stops other cells in my body from turning into estrogen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a roller coaster of how you feel about yourself and your body and how it's changed. A lot of people joke, and I remember joking like, well, at least I'm going to get good boobs out of this deal. But the reality is it's not the same as a woman just going to get an augmentation and making their real breast tissue better with implants, because I don't have any real breast tissue now. So that's different in itself. You see all the scars when you look in the mirror. So you really, no matter what, you're constantly still know that it's happening. But I think when I was first diagnosed, I just wanted the cancer out of my body. So I was ready to just be done, get rid of it. Let's cut them off. I don't care. But then like those complications then of that surgery from radiation, like I said, I've had to have a revision this year because essentially the muscle became so contracted in my chest that it deformed one of them and was causing a lot of pain. And so then there's like, okay, if this happens again, what do we do? And so then there's the chance of like, do I get to a point where you go flat? And some women do with breast cancer. They choose just not to get reconstruction, but you just never know how you're going to process it from a mental and emotional standpoint as a woman. So I think, going through it, and obviously the hair loss and like the changes just to a lot of things. And when you're going through it, the chemo can ruin your skin for a while. And there's just so many aspects, but I always would tell myself I'm still alive. I'm healthy now. So maybe I don't look like I used to. And I don't always recognize it until I look at pictures where I'm like, oh, I used to think I was fat then, but I looked so good. And then there's me now. And it's definitely a head game for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And my mom, I will say, would probably agree with that too. And I'm thinking about having her as another guest. And I probably will ask her the same thing, but I have a feeling that it's very similar. That's really tough, because I would say a lot of us women, our appearance a lot of times is our identity.
Yeah.
And our hair is our identity. And I remember when my mom lost her hair, she was literally in the car and I was sitting right next to her, and she just was rubbing her hands through her hair like she normally does. Both of us play with our hair a lot, and she was just doing that. And I remember her like running her hands through her hair and then like bringing it down past her face and like holding it in front of her, and she had a huge clump of hair.
Yeah. And people go bald from chemo, but you never realize how it's going to come out until it does.
And it hurts too.
Yeah, your head is very sensitive. Now afterwards, like my daughter will be like, oh, let me do something to your hair. And I'm like, ow. And she's like, seriously? I'm like, my scalp was never sensitive before. But yeah, the way it comes out in clumps is such a crazy thing, because I remember them being like, well, you'll probably make it through the first 2 cycles and then you might want to shave it. And I wanted to shave it like days after the first cycle, because it was worse for me to see it come out and how thin it was getting than if it was just gone at that point.
Yeah. And I know you said you wore wigs sometimes. My mom didn't like wearing wigs. She preferred hats because she said the wigs were itchy and sweaty and she didn't like it, and then she didn't feel like she looked like herself. I got her a good wig, but it's not who you are.
Yeah, so when I went to get my wig, you actually get like a coupon to go get a free one at a couple different local places. And I remember the lady like asking for pictures what I looked like, and essentially like she picked my wig in hindsight, and I hated it. And I remember being like, gosh, she should have let me have more input. And so I don't know if that's how it goes for everyone. I don't know if it was me being sensitive at the time, but I rarely wore it. And then I ended up just grabbing one off of Amazon, and it was like curly. And so I would wear it when we went out and stuff, but I didn't really wear it like on a regular daily basis.
Yeah.
Because it's still not you. Like when other people look at people with wigs, you're like, oh, that looks real. But when it's you, you just can't see past the fact that it's not.
Yeah. And I always said to my mom too, I'm like, man, I love wearing hair pieces. I would love to wear a wig. And she goes, yeah, because you want to, not because you're being forced to. And when she said that to me, I was like, damn, that's right. She's right.
Well, and even just the regrowth process. I mean, I remember coming to you when it was little stubble on top of my head.
Yeah.
And I think that was harder. I remember so many times just being like, shave it back off, because you go through this awkward stage where it's like stubble. And then I had like this tight little just curl on the top of my head. And I was like, when is it ever going to like be normal? And then now it's like, I'm back to where I was 4 years ago.
And it looks beautiful. Yeah. So, but you've come a long way.
For sure.
You went through that journey.
Right.
All right. So what advice, and I know you kind of talked about this a little bit, but just so the people in the back can hear it, what advice would you give to somebody newly diagnosed with breast cancer specifically, but any type of cancer?
I would say, like I said, to know that it's not going to be a cakewalk. Everybody knows it's hard, but for the hundreds of people that tell you you're a warrior and you're tough and you've got this, like just knowing that it's okay to have those shitty days where it's not okay and you don't feel like a warrior and you don't feel like you're tough and you want to crumble, like it's okay, but tomorrow's a new day and you have to get back up. I mean, there was days where I would lay in bed and just bawl and be like, this is never going to end. I'm going to feel like this forever. And so it's hard when people, like I said, pump you up. Like it's great to be cheered on and pumped up and all those things, but then you have that expectation for yourself. Like I have to make everybody think I'm doing this and I'm strong and I can't let them know that it sucks. But I remember like apologizing to people for crying because I wanted them to think I was strong. So I'd be like, I'm sorry I'm being a baby. It's just a really hard day. And I would always try to like apologize, and because I felt like I was being a burden then if I was upset or having a bad day. So I think just knowing it's okay, like I said, we have to get back up the next day and keep going, but it's okay to have those crappy days where you just want to cry in a corner and not do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. Are there any resources, organizations, or rituals that you want to share with others that helped you through this process?
Yeah. So as far as breast cancer specifically in the Des Moines area, there is Can Do Cancer, which is a nonprofit, and they are geared towards breast cancer patients. And so I was told by a couple of friends and was able to sign up for that. And anybody in the Des Moines area who's going through chemotherapy for breast cancer, they hook you up with like gift cards for meals on chemo days. And they, you have the option of like somebody coming to clean your house, and then they set you up with like a patient partner. And so it's somebody who had a similar diagnosis to you that reaches out, checks in, gives you advice. And so it's really cool. I've debated like signing up as a partner, but I don't know if I'm mentally to the place where like I want to have to talk about cancer at specific times. Like I kind of am still in that mode of wanting it to be like a me time, but they were just really helpful because on the days that you sit through chemo for 6 to 8 hours, the last thing you want to do is go home and cook a meal for your family. Having those gift cards to pick up dinner, knowing that I wasn't going to want to eat the next 3 days was very helpful. And like I said, just having that partner that you could check in with and get advice from and connect with that's been through it, because you can talk to all your friends and family all you want, but they don't know all the ins and outs of it. So that was a really helpful organization for me through it all.
Yeah, and I have heard about them, and I think you were one of the first people to actually introduce me to them. So I am thankful that I've been introduced to them. So if you guys are not aware of Can Do Cancer in the Des Moines area, please reach out to them if you need assistance or just research them in general, or if you have anything to give towards the organization. I know that they would be happy to accept anything.
I think to wrap it up, as far as the cancer perspective, I think the biggest thing for me personally was my faith. I had kind of drifted away from my faith over the years. Like now, when everybody says like there's a reason everything happens and there's a purpose, like I'm a firm believer that God wanted to draw me back in my relationship with him. And so I really got back into church and my faith and prayer and reading my Bible through that journey. It got me through a lot of the really dark moments, is just praying and that relationship with God. So if faith is important to you or has ever been in your life, I think that's important to turn to that really to get through the hard days, because without faith, I can tell you I probably would have been a very dark person through this journey.
You literally just brought tears to my eyes when you said that, because I literally just went to a funeral of a dear friend of mine. Her grandma recently passed away, and she had cancer. She didn't have breast cancer, but she did have another type of cancer. And that was one thing. She believed in God, but she wasn't real active in her faith. And right about a year or so before, the pastor at this service on Friday had said, I saw her the very first time that she walked in. She came to me and had told me, and she was a very blunt person, this woman, and she was asking all kinds of questions about her faith and getting more of a connection with God, especially after being recently diagnosed. And he said that he saw her transform completely within the last 2 years. And she even recently got rebaptized. And one of the things that she said when he was going to baptize her was, I need to know for sure that you're going to catch me. But he goes, what was so transformative about that was the day of her baptism. He said, I felt her totally give in to the Spirit and to God. And he goes, it totally changed her life forever and ever. Amen. Until she was, her last day here on earth was. But we now know that she is with God. So yes, Jalisha, 100%. I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. I'm going to sneak into your notes here because I'm going to get these quick fire questions. Okay, so we'll wrap it up with some light rapid fire questions just for fun, to give everybody a little deep dive into you as a person. Okay, what is your go-to coffee order? And if you don't drink coffee, tell me what you love to drink.
Oh, I do like coffee, and right now I'm not a pumpkin spice girl, but right now I'm hooked on the Starbucks pumpkin cold brew foam. But you got to add pumpkin sauce.
Okay.
To give it a little bit more pumpkin flavor. So that's my right now. Once it gets a little colder, I'm definitely a white mocha peppermint.
Oh, I love that too.
Yes.
Okay, good choices. What is a closet staple that you can't live without?
I really like a good pair of jeans and a crew neck. Yeah.
It's classic and never out of style.
I'm weird and love jeans.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. First concert you ever went to?
NSYNC.
And was it worth it?
Totally was. I wore that shirt probably 100 times afterwards. We were in like 6th grade and we all wore our concert shirt to school the next day after being up to like 1 a.m. in Ames at the stadium.
A little jelly even being almost 40 years old. I never got to see NSYNC at that age or even as an adult. So that's pretty badass. Great. That's awesome. I would have wore the shirt too, and it would have stunk because I would have just kept wearing it, like bragging to everybody.
I feel. Like that thing was way cooler from the.
That's right. I got it from the merch tent. What is your hype song when you need a boost?
So I was trying to think of that, just because I love all kinds of music, but I would say during cancer specifically, it was probably Rachel Platten's fight song.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. One beauty product you'd never give up.
I feel like there's 2.
You can name 2.
We're going to go with a good moisturizer and mascara.
Yes, I would agree with that also, because I don't wear a lot of makeup anymore. Yeah. And mascara makes me look alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. Are you a wine gal?
Once in a while.
So do you prefer red, white, or rosé?
Rosé.
Rosé. Yeah.
Or a sweet white.
Yes, I like that. Like a Moscato or something.
Yep.
I love that. Do you have a guilty pleasure TV show that you're watching right now? Because I love to ask this in the chair all the time.
Well, we already talked about the Catfish show.
Yes.
Right now, it's like mid-season. Like nothing's back on yet. My favorite drama type series is The Cleaning Lady. But guilty pleasure, like, why do I watch this garbage, is got to be like the 90 Day Fiance, like after the 90 days, like still seeing where people are, even though they fight 5 years later.
Yeah.
That's my me time.
I love that too. I'm all about it. And I think most women our age would also agree with that. And I would say when I'm in the chair or behind the chair, a lot of times I'll be like, I don't like drama, but I want to watch it.
Yeah.
All day, every day. As long as I'm not involved, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Fun piece of advice that you would give your younger self. And I love this question because I get asked this all the time. I don't know if it's because people think I'm a wreck or what, but what would you give your younger self for advice?
I would say if I could get my younger self to just listen to adults, the experienced people, and not think I had to live and learn everything on my own, and really just like putting myself first. I was a big person that relied on others for my own confidence and didn't have a lot of self-confidence. And like, if I could have changed that, I think things would have been a lot different, but I just always wanted everybody else to like me instead of just loving myself first.
Yeah. I think a lot of people could relate to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really good sound advice. So if you are a younger person, or even if you're still trying to figure out who you are, because every day I am a work in progress myself, take that advice and do what's best for you. Because again, like we said earlier, tomorrow is not promised, and you got to live your best life. And that doesn't mean hurting others. That just means doing what is healthy for you and your lifestyle, and not worrying about what everybody else thinks.
Absolutely. Just knowing that you are the only person that's going to be there for you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And your friends and boyfriends at younger stages aren't going to be around forever. I mean, some friends will stay around, and every once in a while a high school sweetheart is with you 20 years later, but like really you are going to be your best, what am I trying to say? Like you're your most important person.
That's right. That's right. Well, again, Jalisha, I really appreciate you sharing your story. Do you want to make any other final plugs about yourself, about where you work, about people who were your ride or dies, or anything like that before we close the podcast today?
Just having a best friend. Obviously, Desiree knows my best friend is Peyton, not my daughter, the grown-up Peyton. She was probably my number one through all of this. Just on the good days, the bad days, like I said, we work together. She's also my best friend. And if I didn't have her to lean on through it all, obviously outside of family, my significant other, my daughter, my parents were a big help. But as far as friends go, like you do need that one. Like you said, you find out who really is your true friends. And she was my number one ride or die through it all. So yeah, like I said, God first, then family, then a bestie is the most important to get through tough things.
I love that, and I couldn't said it any better. So with that, we are going to end. Thank you again, Jalisha. And I'm just going to end with, please check with yourself, check with your bestie, and get yourself checked and book a mammogram. Have a great rest of your day, month, and we'll see you next time, guys.